Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert, and I want to welcome everybody here. If you are thinking of doing a side hustle, if you've heard a bit of the buzz that's around this, especially right now, and you are thinking of doing this for yourself, you've come to the right place. This is where we discuss all things related to side hustles, and it's mainly going to be a Q&A. So if you see the chat right next to my video, get in the chat, and if you have any questions, ask your questions, because I don't have much of a script or a plan. I'm just sort of feeding off the topics that people are interested in. But just to lead it off, while we wait for questions, I want to say that if you are interested in doing this, I've got great news for you, and that is that you can, because many people successfully start up side hustles every day. And this is something that really isn't the world's greatest challenge as long as you follow a few basic guidelines. This is the world of business. And there are many advantages to side hustles. The number one advantage, of course, is that you make money, so you have more money coming in. The second advantage is that your income is diversified. You have different revenue streams coming from different sources. If you have a day job, you'll have revenue coming in from that. If you have a side hustle, you have revenue coming in for that. So what it means is that you don't have a single point of failure. So if something happens to your day job, you have a bit more security because you still have your side hustle, and vice versa. So that's another advantage. And the third advantage that not a lot of people talk about for some reason is that it's it can be very creatively satisfying. If you've ever had a job that's tedious, boring, pointless, miserable, it makes you wonder why you even bother. A lot of people are stuck in jobs like that. Or maybe the job isn't so bad. It's just maybe you're under the thumb of a oppressive boss or something. This is an opportunity to get away from that. There is more in life to making money than simply working a job, being an employee, and exchanging your efforts for money. You can go straight to the source. You can create the money yourself. And therefore, because you're designing the job yourself, it's much more creatively satisfying. You can do what you want, and you can feel good about yourself. It's a great boost to your self-esteem. You tend to enjoy what you do better because you decide what you do and how you do it. So there's many advantages of this. It's a tremendous boost to your personal confidence, too, to see something that you've done have a measure of success. And finally, the other major advantage of doing this is that if you do it correctly, if you think about some of these issues ahead of time, you can do something that is scalable, which means that you could start small, a little bit of money on the side, a little bit of time, not a full-time thing, and then if the situation dictates, you can ramp it up to where it takes over your full-time job and it replaces the income for your day job. And not only that, but it goes beyond what a day job can provide, and you can make more money than you would in a day job. So that's the advantage too. So yes, all those advantages. And here we go. First person, the winner of the first message of the day in the chat is Borko Yankovic, if I'm saying that right. Yankovic. Hi, I'm usually silent when I have an interview, but I'm going to need to review your videos for Monday. Okay. Okay, good. That's job interview related stuff. I do have some videos on entrepreneurship, on side hustles, and on business. So I haven't done those in a long time, actually. But I do have some of those. So I see that there's 19 of you guys here. You guys are awesome for being here. We're going to talk about some self-improvement. So get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering. What's the biggest problem or the point on which you're the most confused when it comes to side hustles or startups, entrepreneurship, small business, that kind of thing? That's what we're here to talk about. And there's an entire universe of topics and things I could discuss related to this, but just to pick one at random and fill some air while we're waiting for the questions is something I haven't mentioned so far in this series, is the need to be cheap in the beginning. This is something that, for me, it's something that I've taken special note of when I've worked with startup founders and small business owners. You can always tell kind of the amateur people, because they come in and they usually take the approach that I have to borrow a ton of money and then spend it immediately on, it turns out, things that are really non-essential, like fancy websites, fancy offices, things like this that are really, really non-essential. The key to doing a startup efficiently and properly is to do things as cheaply as possible in the beginning. And I'm not talking about sacrificing the quality of what you're doing. I'm talking about not spending money on non-essential things. I worked with a startup a couple of years ago. One of the last startups I worked with that I was advising. And it did not last very long because this particular group of people, their first thing that they did with their money, they had gotten some grants and some loans and all this kind of stuff, which are relatively easy to do these days. They had gotten this stuff, and the first thing they did was get an office. They didn't have any customers. They didn't kind of have the whole what they're going to sell and who they're going to sell it to thing figured out yet. But the first thing they did was they got an office and they decked it out with, the fancy, like, I don't know what you do. I don't know if it's granite countertops, but like, the real fancy office. And they spent thousands of dollars on this. And that was like the first thing they did. And they didn't even at that point really even have a product or really have had thought too far down what they were going to do in terms of marketing. And needless to say, it did not go anywhere. The thing to do is to try and avoid unnecessary expenses in the beginning. And what's a great way of thinking about it is that if you're making your plan and you're sort of trying to predict what you're going to do, what you're going to be spending money on, a good thing to do is to try and, instead of figuring out how can you pay for something, instead try and figure out how could you avoid the need for that thing, this thing you have to pay for. So for example, instead of like buying a machine that does this, is there an alternative to buying? Instead of just thinking, okay, I immediately must go to financing and try and get loans or whatever to pay for this, is there an alternative? Could I rent the machine? Could I borrow the machine? Is there something in my city where they offer access to a lab or whatever that has that machine for either free or a very, very small fee to get in? A lot of times stuff like that exists. Or is it absolutely necessary that I do the thing that needs that machine right up front? Do I have to start with that? Could I start with something else? Right? This is a great way of thinking when it comes to this stuff. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We're not really getting any questions here. I was hoping we'd get more questions because I'd like to respond to that. Well, looks like I have to fill a bit of dead air today. You see, I do my live stream on Wednesdays, which is all about job search. That's a pure Q&A. And I wanted to do the side hustle thing, and I thought it would take a slightly different form. But we did a few Q&A versions of the side hustle ideas, and I thought that really worked great. A lot of people asked some really intelligent questions, and it really stimulated a great conversation. And I was talking about things that I know people are interested in. So I was thinking of maybe turning this into more of a Q&A also. But maybe that's just not in the cards today. Anyway, another thing I haven't mentioned on this stream so far that's also very important. If you are thinking of doing a certain business idea, okay, in a certain industry, something that can be a tremendous help if you're wanting to break into an industry or you're wanting to learn all about it are industry associations. This is something that not too many people are aware of. I always use the example of plumbing, right? I've used that before. Maybe I'll use something different today. If you want to break into, you want to be a travel agent or something like that, right? Let's just take that as an example for today. You want to become a travel agent, set up a side hustle where you offer travel agent type services. Okay. Usually in an industry like the travel agent industry, which is, I guess, a subset of the tourism industry, there will be an industry association. So what that means is that if you were to look up all the other businesses in your city or your region that are travel agents, usually there'll be members of some kind of industry association. So the industry association, what they do is they set up this entity, and they a lot of times will release some kind of publication. In the old days, it would be a magazine. In modern times, it's more like a website usually. And that's where there will be publishing. There'll be like a sort of central hub for all things related to travel agents. And they will publish new laws whenever there's changes in laws or regulations about travel agency. Whenever there's new tools available, there are companies that want to sell software tools or other types of tools to travel agent businesses. Okay. They all use the association as their hub. And usually the people at the association are experts on what's going on in that industry. And they will usually put on events every year. So they might rent out like the convention center or something in your city, and they'll have a travel agent association event. And all the people from all the travel agency companies will go there, and all the customers of travel agents and all the suppliers of travel agents will be there. The government regulators will be there. Everybody will be there. So if you go to that event, it's like a sort of one-stop shop for everything in the travel agency industry. And this is a tremendous resource if you're wanting to set up a business, say, as a travel agent, right? So most industries have these associations, and they usually have a branch in most major cities, and you can join as a member. And if you wanted to know sort of in a nutshell, who are all the travel agent businesses in my region and what resources are there, they will have that, and they will be able to help you. So a great, great resource if you're looking to break into a certain industry. Okay, we're getting more activity in the chat. That's great. Thank you for participating. I see there's 26 of you guys here, and you are all awesome. Every single one of you. Yusef says, hello, sir. This is Yusef. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. I'm recovering from some respiratory illnesses I've had. February has been a really rough month for me. January was awesome. February just stopped me dead in my tracks, so it's been a real challenge, but I'm coming out of it. But thank you for asking. Will Coronel, I recognize your name, says, hello, Bill. A YouTube channel with musics can be a good side hustle to start. I'm not sure. I haven't done that myself, so I wouldn't know exactly how good that would be as opposed to other YouTube channels. But that's definitely something for you to look into. There is a website. What the hell were they called? I think they were called YouTube Crawler. And like you go to Google, you type in YouTube Crawler. Let's do this right now. So YouTube Crawler. Okay. And what they do is if you're wanting to do sort of research on YouTube channels, like how many there are, how big they are, things like this. So you could go, for example, in the category of music, in, say, the English language, in, say, whatever country you're in. I'm going to type in Canada. How many channels are there over, say, 1 million subscribers? And I guess it's going to think about it for a second. And then 49 channels. And then these are them. So you can maybe check out some of those. Okay. This is a tool that helps with YouTube. There are other tools too. But that might help you do some research to get answers to that question. And just do a series of Google searches and watch a few videos. Borko Yankovic says, side hustle idea, organizing and outsourcing workforce from and to another country in areas related to industry. E.g., my friend is pilot and he made huge money by organizing mechanic training. Okay. Yeah. Now, if you have specialized knowledge about that, sure. Yeah. If you're on the inside of that, industry, as part of your day job, for example, that would be something to check out. Okay. Usually service related side hustles can be very profitable, as opposed to product side hustles. They both can be profitable, but one advantage of services is that you tend to need less money to start making money with that. For example, the YouTube channel idea, same idea. You're providing a service, you're not selling a product. Borko, again, he connected Avio, so like avionics, mechanics, and one country and referred them to the training center in another country, helped to organize transport and courses, and earned lots of money. Okay. Yeah, so basically you're like a travel agent, but for a very niche market for mechanics, and you also are adding value in that you're recommending training facilities and setting up the travel and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I know that a lot of businesses, in my experience, just do that internally. They don't necessarily outsource that, but yeah, I mean, that's something definitely you'd want to look into. Youssef, your videos perk me up. Lot of knowledge. Thank you for all your efforts. Good. Well, thank you for saying so, Youssef. That's very kind of you, and I'm glad they're useful. Yeah, get in the chat if you have a question about side hustle, something you're struggling with, something you're wondering. That's why I'm here. I would like to talk about that. I have consulted on this kind of thing for years, not necessarily side hustles, but actual startup companies. So either innovative startups or traditional small business. And that's sort of more of my main line. So, and I also find this an absolutely fascinating topic. It's if a lot of job seekers knew how much this was an actual realistic career option, I think a lot more people would be doing this than getting traditional jobs as an employee. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of creativity and they have a lot of real world skills. And this is a great marriage of the two of them that allow you to A, make money, and B, do something creative. And if you do it right, it can be more profitable than working as an employee for a lot of people. It's just that simple. Especially if, you have skills that you can adapt to, emerging technologies, emerging markets, things like this. A lot of young people, the sort of the plight of young people is that, generally you would start at the bottom in terms of seniority. You would be the younger employees, the newer employees, you'd be the noobs, right? People that have already been at traditional companies for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, they tend to be towards the top generally. And the new people coming in start at the bottom. That's kind of how these things usually work, is in a very general way. But the advantage of being young one of the advantages is that if you are more in tune to emerging technologies and emerging markets, you see how you can adapt, newer sort of tools and technologies to meet the needs of people, so it can do something useful. It's something that someone would want to pay for, right? You have an advantage over middle-aged people like me or older people that just aren't tuned into that kind of stuff, And the world is changing all the time. The world always has been changing all the time, and that's one advantage that younger people have, is that you're more tuned into the stuff. So if you are, and you can do something useful, you have some real world skills, this can be a tremendous alternative to starting at the bottom in a traditional type employee role. Let's Learn Together says, how can we be in compliance with our employers while doing a side hustle? Well, here's the deal. Your employer has a contract with you that basically says that they will pay you cash in exchange for you doing certain things. Okay? Now, depending what you have in your contract, if you're sort of at the lower level, at the worker level, usually it's just a straight exchange. We will give you stuff in terms of compensation in exchange for your time. You agree to show up on time, to work these hours, to do this type of work, that kind of thing. And and follow company rules. And as long as you comply with that, we will uphold our side of it, where we compensate you with cash and benefits and other things, right? Sometimes there will be other things in your employment contract that they talk about exclusivity. They say, okay, when you're working for us, you agree that you're not going to make money through any other means, or something like that, or you're not going to work for any other entity in this particular industry, or you're not going to engage in certain types of work. Okay, so in order to answer this question, you would have to look at the contract that you signed, that you agree, the things you agreed to. Okay, now if it doesn't mention anything about exclusivity, or anything like like a non-compete or anything like that, it doesn't say you agree that you won't do certain other activities, okay? Then the sky's the limit, okay, in what you can do, okay? Just because you work for an employer, it doesn't mean that they have the powers of God over you, okay? As long as you uphold your end of the agreement, they're going to uphold theirs. That's what the employment contract is. Now, outside of that, and speaking as a former CEO, as a former sort of person who represents organizations and has owned organizations, ideally, you would want your employees to care about their job. You would want them to want to do a good job, to take their employment contract seriously, and the way that they would do that is to be dependent on it. Okay, so one way they would be dependent on it is if it's their only source of income, for example. Okay, let's say I had an employee that was a worker level employee, and they won the lottery, or they had a lot of money from their family. They came from a very rich family. Well, money might not be the primary motivation they would be an employee, right? So if their job starts to become tedious or miserable, or they're not getting a lot of satisfaction out of it, the tendency would be that they're not going to really be loyal to the company. They're not going to care too much about their job. Maybe they quit. Maybe they disengage at work and just don't give a crap. Right? So I would want my employees to be motivated, and part of that is I'd want them to care about keeping their job and excelling in their job. Ideally, you would want to do it through positive reinforcement, not negative reinforcement. You'd want them to be ambitious and want to impress their boss, and that's why they do a good job, not because they're afraid of being fired constantly, right? Okay, so that's kind of the motivation. So the reason why I'm saying that is because if you then go to your boss and say, oh, by the way, I'm doing this thing on the side and it's making me a lot of money, right? The first thing that the boss would probably think is, okay, it seems to me like your loyalties are divided, okay? Now, you get a wide variation in how employers think. Some employers think, what you do at home, I don't care about. What you do outside of work hours, I really don't care about. Okay, that's your business, and I have absolutely no stake in that or interest in that. Other employers, I don't know. I mean, I think these people are crazy, but they take it as some kind of personal slight, and they think, you're no longer loyal to me and my company, right? Even though you haven't broken any of your commitments and you're still upholding your end of the employment contract, they see it as more of a psychological contract that, you agreed to be dependent on me and the company or something. And so they, your currency goes down in their mind. And they start to fear that, okay, you might leave at any moment because if someone is going to choose between being an employee at somebody else's company or running their own company, they're going to pick their own company every time because their own company is their own creative baby, right? They got to choose how it works and what you do. So they're always going to choose that over somebody else's, vision for like a job, right? So, generally, as long as you're not breaking any kind of employment agreement, the way I would handle these things is just don't mention it. Don't mention it. Why go out of your way to mention it to your boss or anything like that when you don't have to? Why go up to your boss and say, "Oh, by the way, I got my own thing going on the side." It's like there should be no need for that. And if your side hustle is in the same business that your day job is in, it can lead to some conflicts of interest. Okay, so there might be stuff in some employment contracts about that. They might have clauses. You get these for executive level jobs where it says if you have a conflict of interest, you will disclose it. You will disclose it voluntarily as soon as you identify this. Okay, and failure to disclose that is some kind of breach, right? So there's all those kinds of issues there. But generally, for most people, the vast majority of people, there shouldn't be any need to disclose it. If your employer does come up to you and like sort of ask, "Are you doing this?" It's unless you've got something specifically written into your employment contract, it's none of their business. Okay, it's something you're doing in your personal life. It's a relationship you have with other people, like other customers. It has nothing to do with them. Okay, so that's the situation. But that's a great question. You shouldn't use this as like a reason to not investigate doing a side hustle if it's something you want to do. As long as there's no like big conflict of interest, okay, or it's violating any explicit thing in an employee contract, it's not a problem. You have the freedom to do what you want with your life. Rami says, what kind of side hustle an academic can tap into? Oh, there's all kinds. I mean, I'm not an academic, but if you are a subject matter expert, bam, consultant, right there. How can you use your specialized knowledge that like 99.99% of the population don't have? How can you use that to make money? Usually there's a lot of companies that will pay for that kind of expertise in a consulting type role. Failure, in terms of consulting, you could also weave it into teaching. Okay, you could teach outside academia, outside your institution. You can offer online courses, or you could do mentoring, or there's all kinds of things. You could write books and distribute your knowledge that way. You could do like what I'm doing, a YouTube channel. You could do, you could distribute that knowledge over a variety of channels, okay, to a variety of different people. I was talking to, one of the recent conversations I had, relatively recent, was I was talking to somebody that had a PhD. I believe they had a PhD in entomology, I believe it is, like the study of insects. And they were telling me about like, you would think like that's a very sort of niche kind of area of expertise, like all about insects, but very, very big in agriculture, right? There's a lot of big money in agriculture, basically food production. And if you're growing crops in a field, one of the big concerns you'll have is how do you prevent insects from, eating all the crops and invading everything. And so, they are very, very interested in talking to people with very specialized knowledge in insects and things. So it's a matter of thinking of like, who would who would benefit from your knowledge, okay? And you can go consult for them. Brutus says, do you think that it is a good idea to write in the CV that you are a member of Mensa? Okay, so this is a job-related question. Yeah, we're not dealing with that in this chat, unfortunately. But to answer your question, I mean, why not? Why not? XT says, hi, can you recommend where and how to find business consultants for new business ideas? Well, I'm looking right at you. But listen, you shouldn't need a consultant to figure out what you're going to do. That's usually not a good way to start, okay? You need to figure out what you need to do, okay? It can require a bit of thought, it can require a bit of soul searching, and it can take a bit of time. But the best way to come up, the way to come up with the best idea for you is for you to lead the charge on that, okay? Because whether an idea is going to work or not as a business, when you're doing it, is a unique situation. No one can tell you whether this business or that business is going to be good for you. You can talk to people that will tell you, they can read basic economic data and they can say, well, this type of business is generally profitable, whereas this type of business is generally less profitable. But knowing that is not the same thing as knowing, will it work for you, okay? Because that's the only relevant question. And you're dealing with two unique variables. One is your particular set of skills, knowledge, traits, and experience. The other unique factor here is your particular situation, okay? You know, maybe all the people that successfully started this type of business, maybe what you don't realize is that they all had previous work experience being at the center of this other industry, an experience that you don't have, networking connections that you don't have. They have seen the inner workings of that business and they know how everything works. You don't. That's maybe the missing factor, right? So what's best is for you to come up with the idea for yourself, okay? It's not the quickest way of doing it, but it will produce the best results. Okay? And the other thing is, how can I put this? If you are doing your own thing, okay, you're a leader, not a follower. You're the person that's making the decisions. And in order to start making decisions, you need to start feeling, you need to be the type of person that can make decisions, not the type of person that stays back, waits for every single other person to give their approval and permission for you to do something. You have to basically feel comfortable with taking those decisions yourself. Okay? And in things like this, it doesn't matter if you get approval for it or not. What matters are the results. XT goes on. Should the file, DBA, even though business niche is still being researched? Sorry, you lost me. You need to improve your grammar so that I can parse what you're saying there. Lost God, there's a name. Allow for the possibility that you have something important to contribute to the world and that the world will be a lesser place without that contribution. Okay, that's a very philosophical way of summing up business, I suppose. The way I would have phrased something like that is that in order to sell something, you have to satisfy somebody else's needs or wants. Okay, it's as simple as that. You have to produce something that somebody else either wants or they need. Okay? And if they want this and you can satisfy it, or they need this and you can satisfy it, they'll pay you money in exchange for it. Okay, it's just that simple. So that's the goal. And a lot of learning this stuff, okay, is you learn by doing. You learn by trying things. So the thing that I always recommend in a nutshell is don't spend money, okay, because you're going to be trying a lot of things. A lot of them will fail. When that happens, you will learn what doesn't work. As you do more of those, you will have the odd little win and success, and you will learn what does work. And then after a lot of those, you will get a feel intuitively for what will work and what won't. And then when you try something that has a lot of success and you're starting to get a lot of money rolling in, that's the point where you can start spending a little bit of money to ramp it up and make it even bigger. That's the general formula for these things. Okay. I have to wind this down in a couple of minutes, but I'll take one or two last questions here. So XT clarifies, yes, looking for professionals to run ideas past. Thank you. Doing business. Yeah, I would avoid that, XT. I mean, I know that sounds good. It sounds like a good idea, but think about what you're doing. You're asking people who haven't done your idea if your idea is going to work, okay? What the hell do they know? Like, even someone like me, if you ask me, like, will this work? I mean, I can give you my opinion, okay, on generalities. But if you're asking me about something that I've never done, I don't have expertise in, what does my opinion matter? If you've done the work, okay, like I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an idea in your head that I'm going to offer this and people are going to be willing to buy it for this much money. And I only have to, in order to convince them to buy it, I only have to present that information in a certain way, and that will be enough for them to see it, realize it's valuable, realize that it's worth the money, and pull the trigger on paying me. Okay? Let's say that's your theory. Okay? Now you can run this theory by a bunch of experts and see what they say. But what matters is if you want to test that, do it. Go out on social networking. It costs you zero amount of money to put out a post, to create a graphic or whatever. Put out a post it on social media, put all the hashtags on it, post it in the groups, where all those types of customers usually congregate, and see if there's any takers. See if somebody says, yes, I'll take 2. If you do a bunch of posts and you get exposure to, let's say 20,000 people collectively have seen all your posts. They've seen your message, okay? And of that, you get 0 responses. That might tell you something, okay? Maybe the theory you had is false. If, on the other hand, you have 17 responses that say, hey, I'm interested. How do I sign up for this? Or how do I pay for it? Okay. You're not actually taking money on any false pretenses. You're just probing the market to see what the response is. Now, if you get 17 responses from people that say, yes, how do I buy one? That tells you something else. What would be an even better test is if you offer to sell something that you could actually deliver on, okay, if there was demand for it, and you got 17 responses, and more than them saying, I have an intention to buy, they actually sent you money. They actually bought this thing. You put it out there as if it's like a thing. And they bought it. You then think like, oh, okay, I'm in the money. And you then accept the payment. And then it's like, okay, so I will do this thing that I said I was going to do. I will provide this service. Maybe it was a tutoring service. Maybe it was I don't know, whatever it was. It's something that you can deliver. Okay. What does it matter what experts think might happen in that case? The proof's in the pudding. You've got money in your checking account from customers that want that thing. That's proof. And now you can deliver it. And if 20,000 marketing exposures got 17 customers, tomorrow do 40,000 marketing exposures. Post it in even more groups. Go on different social networking sites and reach even more people. And instead of getting 17 customers, next time you get 100 customers and money is rolling in. That's the only proof you need. right? That's a proof of not just the idea, it's a proof of whether you can do it in your situation. And that's the only thing that needs to be validated. Okay? So that's where I'm going to leave it today. I've got to sign off. Will Cornell says, thank you, Bill. Absolutely welcome, Will. And thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody for being here. One last question. Stephen Lone says, what do you think about a drone rental business? I don't know. I don't know anything about drones or the business landscapes for drones. Drones in general are a thing, but does that mean that you could be a success doing your thing with drones? I have no idea. But this is something that you can get answers to using something similar to what I just said a moment ago. Okay? Thank you so much for being here. You guys are awesome. I will be back on Monday with another one of these. If you have questions, show up in the chat, ask me, let's get into it. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care.